Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, Dr. Tan. Depending on when you're watching this video, my name is Muhammad Radib Abdul Razak 1814083, and this is my final assessment video presentation for AQS 3130. Without further ado, these are the contents for this video presentation: the introduction of this final assessment, the cost planning process, the post-contract cost control, the whole life costing, and the conclusion of this video presentation. Now, for this final assessment, a scenario was given to us where we are appointed as the consultant quantity surveyor for a furniture factory project. The furniture factory project is to be constructed on a 2,000 square meter area land. The land is located in an industrial area, approximately 5 kilometers from Rawang town. The furniture factory is expected to have a life expectancy of 60 years. Therefore, as the appointed quantity surveyor, the client expects us to ensure the project is value for money. The task given is to explain and show how, as the quantity surveyor, perform these three tasks, which is the cost planning process, the post-contract cost control, and the whole life costing of the project. Now, let's start from the beginning of the project, from the cost planning process. For this process, there are several key stages, which are the preliminary estimate, cost plan, cost check, and tender reconciliation. The first one is the preliminary estimate. As we all know, at the early stage of the project, there are no drawings available for the quantity surveyors to refer for measurement and estimating. Therefore, to make the estimation on the cost of the construction project with that consideration, the preliminary estimate is to be estimated using a pre-tender estimating method. For this project, as the quantity surveyor, I've chosen the financial method, where a cost limit is set on the building design, according to the unit of accommodation or rental value. For example, as shown in this slide, the median sale at Rawang to date is at Rm 138 ringgit per square foot. After calculation and based on the financial method of estimating, the preliminary estimate is to be Rm 3,471,000. After obtaining the preliminary estimate, the next stage is creating the cost plan. The cost plan is usually expressed in the form of allocating sums in elemental arrangements, which is also known as the elemental cost plan. At this stage, the sketch design of the furniture factory project should have been completed by the design team and approved by the client. This will allow for a more accurate method of estimating to be used, which is elemental estimating. This method analyzes the cost of the project on an elemental basis, which attempt to make use of the cost analysis from other previous similar projects. The elements that are considered in an elemental cost plan are seen in the slide, from the substructure until the external works of the project. Furthermore, based on the previous explanation, in order to create an elemental cost plan for this project, relevant cost data from similar previous project is needed. This cost data is usually found in similar previous projects' elemental cost analysis, or ECA. As the previous project is from a different time and condition, adjustment of the cost needs to be done before using it for the elemental cost plan. Therefore, there are two approaches that is to be used for the adjustment of costs and calculation of the cost plan. The first one is the approximate quantities method, and the second one is the build-up rate method. The first approach, which is the approximate quantities method, this is the general formula that is to be used, which show that existing cost analysis will first need updating for inflation and then adjusted for locational index differences. As you can see, the pricing of the cost analysis is adjusted with the time using the tender price index in order for the cost analysis to be updated to the current cost. For the quantity considerations, the quantity of the element is generally referred to in a cost analysis or ECA as the element unit quantity. Therefore, where there is a need to adjust the quantity of the existing cost analysis, it can be done using the existing element unit quantity and proposed element unit quantity as shown in this slide. The same goes for design considerations. In the case there is a need for any adjustment of the design, such as the size, for example, the GIFA of the previous project is different from the proposed project, then it can be adjusted in the way that is shown in this slide. The case is also the same for quality considerations, where in the case the quality of the elements needs to be adjusted, it can be adjusted as shown in this slide. The second approach is using the build-up rate method. This method is used when there is no similar items of elements that can be found in previous project ECAs, because it does not need to refer from any existing project's ECA. Instead, the data such as the cost of the items must be researched on our own. Now, after using the two approach to adjust and calculate the element costs, with the inclusion of the preliminary cost and the brief specifications of each element, this is an example on how the expected cost plan is to be produced. After the completion of the cost plan, the next step is the cost checking process, where the costs will be scrutinized further and there will be regular cross-checking of the cost with the architect and the design team in order to make sure the costs are in alignment and not exceeding the cost target. After that comes the tender reconciliation process, where after the tender is selected, in the case there is any discrepancies in pricing, there will be a form of reconciliation to make sure the most accurate price is achieved. Now, after the tender reconciliation, the tender is now ready to be signed, and after the contract is signed, the cost planning process is complete. We now move on to the next phase, which is the post-contract cost control. Now, the post-contract cost control will involve these four major components, which the first is the interim valuations and certificates for payments, which then can be divided into four main tasks. The first of it is the adjustment of contract sum. In the case where there is any variation that will affect the contract sum during the construction phase or the post-contract phase, the contract sum will be adjusted according to the effect of the changes or variations, as shown in this slide. During the interim valuations, the cost of the preliminary item to be paid is to be evaluated, as the example shown in this slide, along with the evaluation of work done by the contractors in this slide, and the evaluation of the materials on site on this slide, are all to be included in the interim payment certificate for the contractors to receive their payment. The next component involved in the post-contract cost control is the preparation of the cash flow forecast for this project. As the quantity surveyor, the cash flow forecast is a way to monitor the flow of the cost during the post-contract or construction phase, as it allows an evaluation of cash resources that are required and when they are required, and also forecasting any danger of insufficient funds in the future by evaluating the trend of the current cash flow. An example of a cash flow forecast during a contract period of 6 years is shown on this slide. The third component on the post-contract cost control is on the financial statement and report, where in the case there are any changes and variation that occurs, which then will affect the total cost of the project. The financial statement and report will be updated to show the current and expected final cost of the project by adding or omitting the cost that is caused by the variation or changes in the project. For the final task of the post-contract cost control, which is the preparation of the final account, all of the costs of the construction needs to be clarified and settled. Any remeasurement of work needed is to be done, such as for the provisional item or quantities. The day work account and the adjustment of the provisional and prime cost sums that is used in nominated works is also to be clarified. Work that used the sum allocated for contingencies is also to be clarified in the final account, and all the contractual claims is to be settled before the final account is to be released. The furniture factory project is now completed, as the final account has been agreed and released. As the quantity surveyor of the project, the responsibility towards the project is considered finished once the final account is released. Therefore, for this part, we are to discuss not about the construction phase of the project, but the whole life costing process of this project. A whole life cost of a project is the cost of the project from the inception until the demolition of the project. It takes account not only the cost to construct the project, which is the initial cost, but also the cost in use or the operational cost of the building until the building lives end and demolished. Therefore, to calculate the whole life cost of this project, the first step is to identify the stages and costs involved in each of the stages of the whole life costing process. As shown in this slide, the stages in the whole life costing process, which starts from planning and design stage and ends at the replacement, disposal or demolition stage. At each stage, the cost involved is different, and for the purpose of conducting the whole life costing process, the cost involved will be classified as shown in this slide. The cost in the planning and design stage, including the construction and acquisition stage, will be classified as the initial cost at Rm 3,471,000. For the operation and maintenance stage, the cost involved is classified into three, which is the repair cost, maintenance cost, and lighting, ventilation, etc. costs. The repairs is to be conducted every 5 years at the cost of Rm 20,000, while the maintenance is to be conducted every year at the cost of Rm 5,000. And the lighting, ventilation, etc. costs will be calculated per year at Rm 2,500. The next is the renewal or rehabilitation stage, which the cost is classified as the cost for the major modifications that is assumed to be conducted every 15 years at Rm 60,000. And finally, the cost involved in the final stage, which is the demolition stage, will be classified as the demolition and disposal costs expected at Rm 10,000. With all of this information, the next step will be creating the whole life cost plan. But before that, we first need to understand the concept of present value. Present value is a value in the present of a sum of money in contrast to some future value it will have when it has been invested at a compound interest. As the whole life cost involves the cost in the future and the value of money changes as time changes, we need a method to find what is the present value of the future value in order to know how much cost is really needed in the present to cover for the whole life cost. To do that, Paris valuation formula will help us by multiplying the future value with a specific discount factor. Therefore, we are going to use Paris valuation form, specifically table 2 and 5, to find the present value for the whole life cost. Now, with all the information obtained, plus the assumption of the discount factor at 5%, this is the calculation for creating the whole life cost plan as shown in the slide. The calculation of the whole life cost plan is followed up in this slide. And finally, after all the calculation, the whole life cost plan can be completed. An example of the whole life cost plan for this furniture factory is shown in this slide. Usually, the whole life cost plan is presented in the form of net present value or annual equivalent. To conclude, this video has explained and shown, based on the scenario given, how a consultant quantity surveyor would explain and do the tasks of cost planning, post-contract cost control, and whole life costing. That is all for me. Thank you.